You are listening to HOA Neighbor Wars. I brought facts, not feelings. You are not allowed to ignore notices, Barbara shouted, jabbing her clipboard toward my chest like she was serving a warrant. The clear rain cover on the clipboard caught the afternoon light, and I could see a tow warning sticker underneath with my plate number circled in red marker. I stepped back and held up one hand. Barbara, my car is in my own driveway. She snapped the clipboard back and tapped it twice with her knuckle. That does not matter. The violation is documented and you have 24 hours to respond or the tow proceeds. I glanced past her at my car, a shared sedan my sister and I both depended on for work shifts. If it got towed, we were both stranded. I work nights and she works mornings. Losing the car for even a day would get one of us fired. I looked back at Barbara and kept my voice level. What violation? She smiled, thin and cold, and flipped the clipboard over so I could not see the notice anymore. You ignored 3 notices. I said I did not get any notices. She shrugged. That is your problem. If you want mercy, move somewhere without an HOA. Then she turned and walked back toward the street, her pink sun hat bobbing with each step. I pulled out my phone and took a photo of the sticker on my windshield before she could change anything. The sticker said violation reference number, but no actual violation was listed. Just a code that meant nothing to me. I called my sister and told her to take photos of the car from every angle and to park it in the garage if she could. She said the garage was full of storage boxes, but she would try. I hung up and stared at the clipboard Barbara had waved in my face. Something about the whole encounter felt off. The notices she claimed I ignored, the vague code, the threat delivered like I had missed rent for 6 months. I am a civil engineer. I hate sloppy paperwork. This was sloppy. I decided to check the HOA records and see what I was actually being accused of. The Juniper Terrace Records Compliance Association treated records like private property. The management office was in a strip mall 2 miles away, tucked between a nail salon and a tax prep place. I walked in, and a woman behind the desk looked up from her computer. I said I needed to see the violation notices filed against my address. She asked for my name and address, typed something, and frowned. She said there were no notices in the system for my address in the last 6 months. I said Barbara Evans just told me I ignored 3 notices. The woman shrugged and said Barbara was the neighborhood watch liaison and sometimes filed things directly with the board instead of through the portal. I asked if I could see those. She said I would need to submit a formal records request and pay a copy fee. I asked how much. She said 15 cents per page and a 30-day wait unless I paid a rush fee of $50. I said that was ridiculous. She said those were the rules and handed me a form. I filled out the form and paid the $50 because I could not wait 30 days. She said the records would be ready in 2 business days. I asked if I could at least see the board meeting minutes for the last year. She hesitated, then said those were public and she could print them. She charged me another $12. I paid and waited while the printer hummed. When she handed me the stack, I flipped through and saw a budget meeting entry from 8 months ago where a line item for grounds maintenance was questioned by a board member. The discussion was marked as tabled and no follow-up appeared in any later minutes. I asked if the grounds maintenance vendor was still the same. She said she could not answer vendor questions without a separate request. I thanked her and left. I sat in my car in the parking lot and read through the minutes again. The line item that was questioned was labeled landscaping and snow removal, and the amount was 30% higher than the previous year. The board member who asked about it was named Richard Chen. His question was recorded as asking for invoice verification. The response was recorded as board president stating the matter would be reviewed offline. I circled that entry with a pen and made a note to find Richard Chen. Then I noticed something else. 3 months after that budget meeting, a new policy was added to the rules about overnight parking enforcement. The policy said any vehicle parked in a driveway overnight without a current registration sticker visible could be flagged for compliance review. My car had a current sticker. I checked my phone photos. The sticker was visible in every shot. So why was Barbara threatening a tow? I called my friend Aaron, an accountant who lives 3 blocks over in the same HOA. I told him about the tow threat and the missing notices. He said Barbara had been pulling the same stunt for 2 years. He said a neighbor named Greg got towed last year over a fake violation and had to pay $400 to get his truck back. Greg tried to fight it, and Barbara threatened to lock him out of the pool and tennis courts. Aaron said Greg gave up because he did not want the hassle. I asked if anyone ever checked the HOA ledger. Aaron said the board never released it. I asked if he could get access as a homeowner. He said he would try. I told him I was going to find Richard Chen and see what he remembered about that budget meeting. Richard Chen turned out to be easy to find. He still lived in the neighborhood, and his number was listed in the HOA directory. I called and introduced myself. He remembered the budget meeting immediately. He said he asked for invoices because the landscaping contract looked inflated, and the board president, a man named Dale, shut him down and said the board would handle it privately. Richard said he never got an answer, and he stopped pushing because Dale implied he would face retaliation if he kept asking. I asked if he remembered who the vendor was. He said it was a company called Greenway Property Services, and he was pretty sure Dale had a personal connection to the owner. I thanked him and hung up. Then I searched Greenway Property Services online. The owner was listed as Mark Evans. Barbara's last name was Evans. I wrote that down. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. The message said I had 48 hours to remove the violation or the tow would proceed. I texted back asking what violation. The reply was a photo of my car taken from the street with a timestamp from 3 days ago. I zoomed in. The photo showed my car in the driveway at night, but the angle made it look like the registration sticker was missing because of the glare from a streetlight. I texted back saying the sticker is visible in daylight and this is a fake violation. The reply was one word: documented. I saved the entire thread and took screenshots. The next morning I went back to the management office and asked if the records were ready. The woman behind the desk said they were still being compiled. I said I paid for a rush. She said Barbara had requested a review of the request to make sure I was entitled to the documents. I asked who Barbara was to review my request. The woman said Barbara was the neighborhood watch liaison and had authority to flag requests that might involve ongoing enforcement actions. I said that was circular logic. She said she was just following policy. I asked to speak to the property manager. She said the property manager was out until next week. I asked for the regional supervisor's contact information. She hesitated, then wrote down a name and phone number on a sticky note. I called the regional supervisor, a man named Tom Alvarez from the parking lot. I explained the situation and he listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said he would look into it and call me back. I said I needed this resolved before the tow happened. He said he understood and would prioritize it. I hung up and sat in the car feeling the weight of the time pressure. My sister needed the car for her shift tomorrow morning. If the tow happened, we were both in trouble. I decided to find the former board member Richard mentioned and see if there was any old documentation about the vendor contract. Aaron called me that afternoon and said he got a copy of the HOA ledger from a friend on the board who owed him a favor. He said the landscaping line item was definitely inflated, and there were 3 invoices from Greenway Property Services that did not match the work schedule recorded in the meeting minutes. One invoice was dated in February for snow removal, but the minutes showed no snow removal work that month because there was no snow. I asked if he could send me the ledger. He said he would drop it off tonight. I thanked him and told him I owed him. He said, just make sure Barbara does not get away with it. That evening, Barbara showed up at my door with a tow truck idling at the curb. She was holding her clipboard with the clear rain cover and wearing her badge clip like she was about to make an arrest. She said the 48 hours were up and the tow was proceeding. I said I disputed the violation and was waiting for the records request. She said disputes had to be filed in writing within 24 hours of the notice and I missed the deadline. I said I never got a notice. She tapped the clipboard. You got 3. I said prove it. She smiled and said the proof was documented. Then she turned and waved at the tow truck driver. He got out and started walking toward my driveway. I stepped outside and walked past Barbara toward the tow truck driver. I said my car was legally parked in my own driveway and there was no valid violation. The driver looked at me, then at Barbara, then back at me. He said he just got a dispatch order and he was following protocol. I asked to see the order. He pulled out a tablet and showed me a screen with my address and a violation code. I took a photo of the screen and said I was disputing this, and he would be liable if he proceeded. He frowned and looked at Barbara again. She said the HOA authorized the tow and he should proceed. The driver shook his head and said he was not getting in the middle of a dispute. He said I should call the HOA and resolve it. Then he got back in his truck and drove away. Barbara stared at me, her mouth tight. She said I just made things worse and she could find me daily until I gave up and cried. Then she turned and walked back to her car. If you are enjoying this chaos, smash that like button and subscribe so you do not miss the next HOA disaster. I went back inside and called Tom Alvarez again. He answered on the second ring. He said he reviewed my request and Barbara had no authority to block it. He said he was ordering the management office to release the records immediately and he was also going to review Barbara's enforcement actions for the last 2 years. I asked if that would stop the tow. He said he would send a written directive to the tow company tonight and copy me. I thanked him and hung up. Then I texted my sister and told her the car was safe for now. She replied with 3 exclamation points and a thumbs up. Aaron dropped off the ledger printout that night. I spread it out on my kitchen table and went through every line item. The landscaping invoices from Greenway Property Services were always slightly higher than the budgeted amount, and the dates never matched the work logs. One invoice was for April lawn aeration, but the lawn aeration was recorded in the minutes as happening in May. Another invoice was for July irrigation repair, but the minutes showed no irrigation issues that month. The pattern was obvious. Someone was billing the HOA for work that either did not happen or happened at a different time, and the invoices were being approved without verification. I took photos of every page and sent them to Tom Alvarez with a note explaining the mismatch. The next morning, I got an email from the management office with a PDF attachment labeled Records Request Fulfillment. I opened it and found 3 violation notices, all dated within the last month, all addressed to my property, and all signed by Barbara Evans. The notices claimed I had violated the overnight parking policy by displaying an obscured registration sticker. The notices also claimed I had failed to respond within 24 hours. I checked the dates. The first notice was dated 2 weeks ago. I never received it. The second notice was dated 1 week ago. I never received it. The third notice was dated 3 days ago, the same day Barbara showed up with the clipboard. I went to my mailbox and checked every piece of mail I had received in the last month. None of the notices were there. I took photos of the empty mail log and the PDF and sent them to Tom Alvarez. I wrote that the notices were backdated and never delivered. Tom called me an hour later. He said the notices were definitely backdated because the metadata on the PDF showed they were created yesterday, not 2 weeks ago. He said that was fraud, and he was escalating the matter to the board and the management company's legal team. He asked if I had any other evidence. I told him about the ledger and the vendor connection. He said he would request an audit of Greenway Property Services and all related invoices. I asked what would happen to Barbara. He said that depended on the audit, but at minimum she would lose her enforcement authority. I said that was not enough. He said he understood and he would keep me updated. That afternoon, Barbara called different tow drivers like she was speed dialing chaos. I watched from my window as 3 different tow trucks showed up at the curb, one after another, and each driver got out and talked to Barbara, then shook their heads and drove away. One driver pointed at my car and said something I could not hear. Barbara waved her clipboard and the driver shrugged and left. I took photos of each truck and noted the company names. Then I called Tom again and told him what was happening. He said he would send another directive to every tow company in the area and CC the HOA board. He said Barbara was making this worse for herself. That night, Richard Chen called me. He said he heard through the neighborhood grapevine that I was investigating Barbara and he wanted to help. He said he had a certified statement from a former board member named Linda Torres, who left the board 2 years ago because she could not stand the way Barbara and Dale were running things. Linda had documented a pattern of fake violations and vendor favoritism, and she was willing to testify if it came to that. Richard said Linda wanted to meet me. I said I would meet her tomorrow. He gave me her address, and I wrote it down. Then I asked if he knew why Barbara was targeting me. He said probably because I asked questions and she did not like that. He said she had done the same thing to Greg and 2 other homeowners who tried to challenge the board. I thanked him and hung up. The next morning, I drove to Linda Torres's house. She answered the door and invited me in. She was in her 60s, sharp-eyed and clearly fed up. She said she served on the board for 3 years and watched Barbara and Dale manipulate the budget and intimidate anyone who questioned them. She said Barbara used fake violations to cover missing HOA money, and the ledger proved it. She handed me a manila envelope with a certified statement inside. I opened it and read. The statement described how Barbara would issue violations to homeowners who asked too many questions, then use the fines and fees to mask budget shortfalls caused by inflated vendor invoices. Linda said the vendor was always Greenway Property Services, and the owner was Barbara's brother-in-law. I asked if she had proof of the relationship. She said she had a wedding announcement from 10 years ago showing Barbara and Mark Evans as family. I took a photo of the announcement and the statement. Linda said she was willing to go on record if I needed her. I thanked her and left. I acted like I was backing down, because timing was the whole weapon. I stopped calling Tom Alvarez. I stopped emailing the management office. I even sent Barbara a text saying I would pay the fines if she would drop the tow threat. She replied immediately, "Too late. You had your chance. Now you pay daily penalties until you comply." I saved the message and smiled. She was digging herself deeper, and I was letting her. The HOA budget meeting was scheduled for the following week. I marked it on my calendar and started preparing. I printed copies of the ledger, the backdated notices, the metadata report, Linda's certified statement, and the wedding announcement. I put everything in a clear sleeve and rehearsed what I would say. Erin offered to come with me as a witness. I said yes. My sister said she would take the night off work and come too. I told them both to stay calm no matter what Barbara said. They agreed. The night of the budget meeting, the community room was packed. The board sat at a long table in the front, Dale in the center, Barbara to his right. She was wearing her badge clip and holding her clipboard. I sat in the back with Erin and my sister. The meeting started with routine updates. Then Dale opened the floor for resident comments. 3 people asked questions about landscaping costs. Dale said the costs were justified and moved on. Then I raised my hand. Dale looked at me and sighed. He said comments were limited to 3 minutes. I said I only needed 2. He nodded, and I stood up. I said I wanted to address the enforcement actions taken against my property and the budget irregularities I discovered while investigating those actions. Barbara stood up immediately. She said my comments were out of order because enforcement matters were confidential. Dale told her to sit down. She did not. She said I was wasting everyone's time and I should file a formal complaint if I had an issue. I said I already did, and the regional supervisor agreed with me. That got the room's attention. Dale asked what I was talking about. I pulled out the evidence packet and walked to the front. I handed Dale a copy and kept one for myself. I said the packet contained backdated violation notices, a ledger showing inflated invoices from a vendor owned by Barbara's brother-in-law, and a certified statement from a former board member describing a pattern of fake violations used to cover missing HOA money. Barbara screamed. She said the past incident was settled and she did not want it reopened. I said that was exactly why I reopened it. I said the metadata on the notices proved they were created after I filed my records request, not before. I said the ledger showed invoices for work that never happened. I said Linda Torres was willing to testify that Barbara used fake violations to intimidate homeowners who asked questions. Dale flipped through the packet and his face went red. He looked at Barbara and asked if any of this was true. She said it was all lies, and I was trying to discredit her because I did not want to pay my fines. I said the fines were based on notices I never received and violations that did not exist. Then I pulled out my phone and played the recording of Barbara saying she could fine me daily until I gave up and cried. The room went silent. A board member named Claire stood up and asked to see the ledger. I handed her a copy. She flipped through it and pointed at one of the invoices. She said this invoice is dated February 10th for snow removal, but we did not have snow in February that year. Dale looked at Barbara again. Barbara said the invoice was for preventative equipment positioning. Claire said that was not what the invoice said. Another board member asked to see the certified statement. I handed him a copy. He read it out loud. The room erupted. People started shouting questions at Dale and Barbara. Dale banged a gavel and tried to restore order. Barbara grabbed the microphone on the table and said I was a liar, and she had documentation proving every violation. I said the documentation was backdated, and the regional supervisor confirmed it. Someone in the crowd yelled for Barbara to sit down. She ignored them and kept talking. Then Claire stood up, walked over, and unplugged the microphone. The crowd cheered. Dale called a recess, and the board went into a back room. The crowd stayed, and people came up to me asking questions. I showed them the packet. Aaron said he had more copies of the ledger if anyone wanted one. My sister took photos of the crowd. 15 minutes later, the board came back. Dale said the board was suspending Barbara's enforcement authority pending an audit, and the management company was being directed to review all violations issued in the last 2 years. He said any homeowner who believed they were wrongly fined could file for a refund. Barbara stood up and said the board had no authority to suspend her. Dale said the board absolutely had that authority, and if she continued to interfere, she would be removed from the liaison position entirely. Barbara grabbed her clipboard and stormed out. The crowd clapped. After the meeting, Tom Alvarez called me. He said he watched the recording someone posted online, and he was impressed. He said the regional supervisor intervention would strip Barbara's informal authority, and the management company was already implementing a new policy requiring board approval for all enforcement actions. He said Barbara would not be able to issue violations on her own anymore. I asked about the audit. He said it was underway, and preliminary findings confirmed the vendor favoritism and the fake invoices. He said criminal charges were being considered. I thanked him and hung up. 2 days later, Barbara's post in the neighborhood group chat was removed and replaced with a correction from the board. The correction said the enforcement actions against my property were invalid and all related fines were voided. The correction also said the board was reviewing vendor contracts and implementing new oversight policies. Barbara tried to reply, but her account was restricted. Someone posted a screenshot of her trying to argue in a side thread and getting shut down by the moderator. I saved the screenshot. The following week, I got a check in the mail for the $50 rush fee and the $12 printing fee, along with a formal apology from the management company. The letter said the HOA had agreed to mediation with a neutral third party to address resident concerns about transparency and enforcement practices. I called Aaron and told him. He said 3 other homeowners had already filed for refunds and the board was scrambling. I said good. He said Barbara was threatening to sue, but nobody was taking her seriously. I said she could try, but the certified statement and the metadata would destroy her. The audit results came back 6 weeks later. The report confirmed that Greenway Property Services had overbilled the HOA by $42,000 over 3 years, and Barbara had issued at least 18 fake violations to homeowners who questioned the budget. The report also found that Barbara had used a portable thermal printer to print violation slips on the spot with backdated timestamps, and the printer's internal log proved the dates were false. The management company fired the property manager for failing to catch the fraud, and the board voted to terminate the contract with Greenway Property Services. Barbara resigned from the liaison position before she could be removed. The board hired a new vendor and implemented a policy requiring invoices to be verified by at least 2 board members before payment. 2 months later, I was sitting in the HOA office doorway with the final packet in my hand. Tom Alvarez was inside with Dale and the new property manager. I handed Tom the packet and he opened it. Inside was a copy of everything: the ledger, the backdated notices, the metadata report, Linda's certified statement, the wedding announcement, the audit report, and a timeline I had built showing how Barbara used fake violations to cover the vendor fraud. Tom looked through it and nodded. He said this was exactly what they needed for the insurance claim. Dale said the HOA was filing a lawsuit against Barbara and Mark Evans to recover the stolen money. I said I wanted to testify. Tom said they would call me. I shook his hand and left. Barbara never came back to the neighborhood. Her house went up for sale 3 months later. Aaron said she moved to Florida. I said good riddance. My sister said she hoped Barbara learned her lesson. I said she probably did not, but at least she could not pull the same stunt here anymore. The new vendor was transparent, the invoices matched the work, and the board started publishing quarterly budget reports online. The HOA even added a resident oversight committee to review enforcement actions. I volunteered, and they accepted. I still drive the same car, still park it in my own driveway, and still check the mailbox every day. The tow warning sticker is gone. The violation notices are gone. The clipboard with the clear rain cover is gone. Barbara is gone. The cold case is closed. I will share another story next time.